New year, new playbook. What's really going to work for LinkedIn B2B marketing in 2026? Let's take a look. G'day everyone, it's Michelle J. Raymond here and welcome back. 2026 has started. We are off and racing, and marketers, I want to know, are you going into 2026 with your LinkedIn strategy with confidence or lots more question marks? Because I think you'd be forgiven if it was the latter with lots of question marks, because ultimately there has been so many changes that went on the platform in 2025, and they were fundamental changes. The way that LinkedIn works now is very, very different to how it has previously. Is it a good thing? I'm not sure. Time will tell. And for me, I certainly went through a bumpy period, as I've shared on the podcast in previous episodes, about what it was like for me with the changes to the algorithm. And now that we've got 360 Brew, which is the engine that runs the algorithm, is completely new technology for LinkedIn. And that is really a game changer. So I'm not saying throw out the playbook for your LinkedIn marketing, but I am saying we really need to stop and take a look. And I think the best place to start for this is definitely going to be the fundamentals of what has actually changed. I think it's important to understand what has changed, and then what I think will make the biggest difference, and where do we go to from here? What things do you need in your LinkedIn playbook for 2026? That includes company pages. It includes how we get our employees active and how we bring them all together. Yay for the power of two. That's not going out of fashion, and certainly something I'll be more focused on in the podcast going forward. So thank you to everyone that gave me so much support last year. It just means the world to me, especially when you reach out and connect. That makes my day. So if you're someone that's new to the podcast, welcome. Please do make sure that you connect with me on LinkedIn so that we can stay in contact between episodes. What's really changed on LinkedIn? Let's start there. And I think the most important place to start with the changes is the definite shift on LinkedIn from a platform where you could pretty much do most things for free and get away with it, to very much being a pay-to-play platform, and LinkedIn focusing on that. So we definitely saw a lot of features being hidden behind paywalls, a very big distinction between free accounts and premium accounts, and rightly so. It probably should have always been like that. We've seen the rise of boost features, so LinkedIn enticing us to spend more money on ads, not just as company pages, but also as individuals now being able to boost our posts. The actual people on the platform have changed. We're now 70% Gen Z, and also millennials are in that number, but Gen Z really do own the LinkedIn platform. And we're going to see more and more changes come through from LinkedIn and features that they promote based on what will attract and keep that audience on the platform. LinkedIn's coming up to a quarter of a century that it's been around and been a part of our lives. Some of you that are listening have probably been around for a long period and seen all of these changes. And that's the only thing that we can be certain of, is that it will continue to change. I think with that also comes the fact that the platform is more crowded than ever. If I rewind the clock 10, 11 years when I first started social selling on LinkedIn, it really was, what I realize now, such an amazing time to be on there. You could post anything and get huge amounts of impressions. You could connect with unlimited numbers of people. It was just brilliant. People would respond to your DMs because they didn't think that you were going to sell them something straight away. And ultimately also, no AI, no automation. Are we still using the term AI slop? Or when humans just copy each other, does that really help our situation or say that we're better than AI? I don't know. There's so many things to think about when it comes to that particular topic. Ultimately, when we're looking at these changes, 360 Brew is now the large language model that runs the LinkedIn algorithm behind the scenes. How would I describe it? Pretty much it's looking for signals from you at all times on who you are, what you do, and what makes you different. So making sure that your profile is updated, that your company page is updated. All of these things are really important, as well as consistent contact with our community and creating content that serves that community. In a nutshell, we probably should have been doing that always. So there shouldn't be any real big changes. But if you're someone like me that has kind of neglected updating your profile for a while, and certainly company pages are neglected in most of the audits that I've ever done, it's time for you to go back and actually do a bit of work on that. But they're the main things that I think are changing. So we're crowded, we're seeing more automation and AI, and that pay to play is really the significant shifts that have come through. What difference does that make? Let's have a look at that next. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty fatigued from all of the shiny new tools that promise the world, that are meant to make my life easier. I'm not sure that they're actually delivering on that. And I know that there's like a lot of content that is starting to push back on, is AI, automation, and all the tools we have, is it really making us more productive? I don't know. How do you think? So here we are in 2026 looking at what is the playbook that marketers need to take into the year for their LinkedIn strategy. What I can tell you is that these shiny new tools, no matter what they promise you, are not going to ever be able to replace a weak LinkedIn strategy. And I think this for me is where I'm encouraging you listeners to really stop focusing on content and go back a few steps and figure out, what is your game plan for LinkedIn? Who are you showing up for? How are you different to your competitors? What is going to make you be a standout brand, a memorable brand, to end up on short lists, as all of the LinkedIn research would suggest? How are you going to actually do that before you create a piece of content? Tools that help you produce content at scale and make you feel like you're more productive. If you haven't done the work on your positioning, on your messaging, and getting clear around those things, then ultimately all you're doing is creating noise at scale, and you're not going to get any closer to your business goals. And this is something that I personally have been doing a lot of work over the Christmas break. Unfortunately, my brain went into hyper focus mode, which it does from time to time. And I realized that if I looked at my website versus how I show up on this podcast versus my LinkedIn content and all the other, places that I am, I'd grown and evolved, and I hadn't gone back and updated things. So I rewrote my website. Yep, really, I did. I have gone back and updated my LinkedIn company page, and it's got new banners and new about info. And I realized just how far I'd drifted off course. So if you had come and landed via a search result on my website or on my page or on my profile, you would have been getting the wrong signals from me. And I should know better. I really should. So for those of you who aren't from a marketing background and this isn't on your radar, it really is important to go back and actually have a look at this stuff. I think that 2026 is the year that those that go back to marketing fundamentals, back to the core of why we're doing this, the core of who are we focused on? Have you spent the last year with your brand really talking about yourself or the company more than being in service of your audience? Like really, honestly, go back and take a look and think, who are you actually doing all of this for? Because I know that I drifted off course and wasn't doing the right thing, because the immediate symptom of that is I don't get intro calls from the right kinds of people, or I don't get intro calls at the volume that I need to scale my business. And so this is a symptom of a problem that when I went back and analyzed it was really easily fixed, but something you need to make time for. So fundamentals for the win. The beauty of doing the work on your fundamentals means that you have crystal clear clarity on how you're showing up for your ideal audience. And that is the most powerful gift that I can really give you at the start of this year. Now that you have clarity around how your brand is going to show up in the market, let's move on to looking at two pieces of the puzzle: your LinkedIn company page and also how employees will show up on LinkedIn. And I call that the power of two. How are we going to bring these two things together? The most important piece of this puzzle is taking a look at the company page. How will that show up this year? And it's really important to look at it differently, through a different lens. And that lens for me is all about the company page really being the backbone of your strategy. It is not something where your posts organically are going to show up in the feed. That's only going to get worse as time goes on. But honestly, it's the silent achiever in the back that shows up consistently day after day, year after year, regardless of how many people come and go within that business. And when it's reliable and consistent, guess what? 360 Brew loves that. Not only does it love it, your team will also be guided by that experience as well. And I think that's the important piece. I want you to look at how you can use your company page differently. No longer is it just posting content talking about the business, broadcasting at your audience. And again, I don't think it was ever that, but we certainly have so many examples of company pages that approach LinkedIn that way. We've got something to say, you're following our page, we're going to talk at you. And then funny enough, they show up on the audit sessions that I do with them. And like, all you do is talk about yourself, which is pretty boring. And then you wonder why you're not getting any comments on the company page content. Well, pretty much you were talking to yourself, and that is the result of doing that. So with your company page, I want it to become the cheerleader for your industry, whether that is for your teammates and other employees within the business, no matter where they are in the world, or whether it's your clients. I want that company page to show up and start commenting and start liking and engaging with posts and reposting where it makes sense strategically, right? This is never a volume game that I'm talking about. So think about how can you make your page active? And that's certainly something that I'm going to be discussing in more detail in future podcast episodes. So make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss out. Let's talk about how employees play into this company page strategy, because you really do need to bring them together. That's the power of two. That's exactly how every business should be working. Company page is there, your employees are there, and we're all working together. And if you've skipped over the strategy step that we spoke about earlier, guess what? Your employees won't have a clue what to do. No different to the marketers running company pages won't have a clue either. And all that happens is they either post content that is not helpful on any level, or they don't post at all, which again is equally problematic. So you have to figure out, how are you going to bring everyone together? Strategy, strategy, strategy. Have I said that enough on this episode? Maybe not. But ultimately, we're going to keep coming back to those fundamentals so that everybody knows which direction they're going. Now, this doesn't mean that I am recommending that as a part of this playbook for 2026 on LinkedIn, that you should go and prescribe every single thing that employees should write about, provide all the graphics, make sure that they only talk about the company. That is definitely not what I'm recommending. You are going to have people at all ends of the scale. So if you want your employees to be active, strategy first, invest in training. Do not assume that they know what to do. Probably the biggest issue I saw in all of the teams that I worked with last year is people think LinkedIn is easy. Guess what? LinkedIn isn't easy. Like, honestly, it's not. Even for me that lives and breathes and eats this stuff, it really is tricky, and it's getting harder as time goes on, not easier. So give them guidance, set them up for success, and certainly don't try and force people to do it, and don't pretend that the business owns their personal account. That is a recipe for disaster, and certainly something I'm not encouraging, but I'm definitely encouraging people getting in the same room and having conversations, whether that's marketing and sales, the marketing and customer service team, regional and global teams. There are so many different ways that we can look at this. So the power of two is your winning strategy. The 2026 LinkedIn Marketing for B2B Reset is happening right now. This is the day that I am encouraging you listeners to stop. Don't post any more content until you've done the work to really achieve that clarity. Who are you showing up for? What makes you different? And what is it that you offer that solves a problem for these people in a way that resonates with them? And I've already done like some power hours this year, and it's been so good to actually have conversations with people that what happened when business got tough in the second half of last year and business dropped off, they decided to go broader and more generic and blend in with the crowd to try and open up opportunities. And the secret to success on LinkedIn is to actually go narrow and have that clarity so that you are the go-to recommended business or person for the problem that you solve. And if you're confused and broad, then everybody else will, and you miss out on those recommendations. And also 360 Brew is developed to try and make these connections. But if you're confused, then it will be confused. And so the results that you will get on LinkedIn won't be anywhere near what you're hoping, especially when we come out in the new year with so much enthusiasm, ready to do things different. We can take over the world. And then boom, without clarity, things are just going to fall over. So clear, consistent positioning, messaging, that is how your brand will stand out and actually achieve the results that you want. Where possible, I want you to think about how can you build systems around your LinkedIn processes built on your strategy where the company page and employees work together and support each other. No more marketers are looking after the company page. The employee advocacy team are doing something else, and everybody else is just running around because they're not a part of those programs doing whatever they want. It's time to sit in the same room, figuratively or literally if you can, and have conversations around what this would look like. What's in it for everyone? What is the purpose? Where are you trying to get to? How can it help individuals achieve their goals, as well as why it's important for the individuals to help support the business to achieve its goals? And this is something that I'm sure you can tell I'm super passionate about, bringing things together. And you're going to see and hear more of that from me this year, because I know that for myself, I got so caught up in the shiny tools that were going to save the world and deliver all this productivity that I got lost. And I forgot to focus on what matters. I think that if together we do the work and stop and reset and think, what is it that we want to achieve from LinkedIn in 2026? And I'm not talking just about the number of posts that you'll do. When we do that work, it will pay off. And I'm going to do a series of these episodes where we can dive into each of these areas a little bit more. So company pages will be next, and we'll talk about employees on LinkedIn and really start to get into why this will make such a big difference. And if we set ourselves up for success, I know that by the time we get to the end of the year, you're really going to have a brand that stands out and is the obvious choice for your audience. So if that sounds appealing to you, it's definitely where I'm going to be heading this year. Don't forget to give the podcast a follow or subscribe if you're watching this over on YouTube. Until next week, cheers.